about.
Okay, thank you. If you could progress the slides as well, that would be great. Okay, so I'm going to explore the academic artistry of program leadership, what this means for the professional identity. Oh, what it means for the professional identity of the program leader and the implications for those of us supporting the development of program leaders. So the work's based on empirical research with program leaders at a research intensive university and extensive work developing program leaders and leadership in the UK, Canada, Australia, Europe and the Americas. So the notion of artistry has really helped shift my thinking about my work with program leaders. But I think I've just got to be honest and acknowledge that my thinking is, to be generous, embryonic. So I'm open to your insights and I really welcome discussion. Next slide, please. So let's think for a minute about program leading and leadership. Program leaders are responsible for the academic, educational and administrative coherence of the programs in their keep. The program of study is, I'd like to think of it as being the nexus of the student experience. Given the importance of student satisfaction, outcomes and graduate destination in global rankings, the sector and sector standing, they are increasingly recognised as crucial to institutional success. So the role is coming out of the shadows. So this is a phrase from Martha Caddell and Sam Ellis up in the Quality Assurance Agency Scotland's work. Institutions are investing in developing the capacity of the program leader to better manage their programs. Notice that, manage their programs. Now, to assure program success, the program leader must work across the entire institution and inspire their academic peers and professional service colleagues' commitment to the program. Understand and work to institutionally specific practices, engage with PSRBs or validating bodies requirements, keep abreast of national policy, the list goes on, operate within the wider context of HE. And this is a sector that's ever changing at an ever increasing pace. So they must be increasingly agile, responsive and resilient. So we're touching on a lot of themes that we've covered already today. This is a big ask for staff that might come to the role as an expert in their disciplinary field, as a historian, a philosopher, a geologist. And it's potentially tricky in the prestige economy of HE, where research might be more highly esteemed than education-focused academic practice. Next slide, please. So how do they do it? I mean, I ask this of myself all the time. Program leaders must exercise educational leadership. So that's setting their direction and influencing change in teaching, learning and assessment. Academic leadership, that's linking research, teaching and scholarship. And administrative leadership, that's the logistics. To marshal academic and systemic complexity, and perhaps even dissonance amongst colleagues servicing their programs into coherence. So their role is so wide-ranging, it can be full of constant surprises. So I don't know about curious, but they certainly have encounters with the unknown in their everyday practice. So giving the defining factors that make up Helen's model of expertise, I would suggest they are indeed exercising a high degree of expertise in their leadership of their programme. Next slide, please. So effective programme leadership is rooted in a deep understanding of the institution in which it's practiced. It's complex, relational, challenging, and as mooted, the programme leader needs to be agile, responsive and resilient. So this corresponds to our understanding of artistry as we've discussed it today. So is educational leadership as much about academic artistry as disciplinary, educational, academic and administrative expertise? And what does this mean for the programme leader who might consider themselves a disciplinarian, a historian, philosopher, so on, and rather than an educational leader? And what does this mean for us invested in supporting programme leaders in fulfilling their role? So development for programme leaders must take into account a comprehensive understanding of not only what the programme leader must know and do, but how they develop this artistry of educational leadership. Next slide, please. So potentially we have to think about motivation. Why do they do it? So in research conducted at Hull, I identified, or myself and my colleague Graham Scott, in research we conducted together, we identified 4 domains of positive benefit to the programme leader. This is essentially what a programme leader gets from the role. This is where authenticity lies, or as Mary said quite nicely earlier, quoting Schwartz, the humanity comes into play in the role to create clarity. So the domains of benefit are listed here. How am I doing for time? I've got 3 minutes.
You're fine. You've got 4 minutes.
Oh, okay, I'm good then. Okay, so the domains of benefit include investment in the program, and this is the pleasure and reward of teaching their discipline. The commitments to students, the investment of their student success in sustaining their discipline and teaching the next generation of scholars in their discipline. An individual interest, and this is the reward found in exercising academic agency and creativity, of professional stretch in stepping up to the challenge of educational leadership and owning their programme. And their responsibility to the community, that's their dedication and devotion to their programme team, their department, their institution and their discipline. So going back to the data, I was really struck by how these domains of benefit speak to the notion of artistry. It's not what program leaders know, it's not what they can do, it's how they deal with complexity and improvise in the navigation and in some of the most trusting institutions in reshaping fixed institutional structures to get the best results for their program students and community. And it's in this improvisation that they found satisfaction, and I would suggest self-actualization. So this is where the identity stuff comes in. How do we nurture this artistry in educational leadership? And this brings us to competence-based program leadership. So to be competent is to have the necessary experience, knowledge and self-awareness to attend to a task effectively. It's a process, as Dewey put it, and before him Plato, as Dewey would say, of giving someone command of themselves so they're prepared for any eventuality. So Graham Scott and I used a model for competence-based higher education that we created for the education portfolio at a whole to create a competence-based model of program directing. So Advance HE funded that work for us, an acknowledgement there. There it is. So the model outlines the experience, knowledge and self-awareness program directors tell us they find necessary to sustain their commitment to and realise the demands of this important role. It gives a focus for educational developers and HE leaders wishing to devise a comprehensive programme of development for programme directors. So rather than going through all 3 of them, thinking about time, all 3 elements, I'll look straight away at self-awareness. I would suggest that the 3rd element, self-awareness, is the most important. That self-awareness we can understand to be the meaning of program directing, of their responsibility to and standing in the learning community. This means program leaders must be given opportunity to be supported in recognizing the importance of the role to the learning community and the program director's success, including getting to grips with the motivations and rewards for the program leading, which program leaders understood to be having some personal pride in the program, the opportunity for professional development in exercising academic agency, and in recognizing program leadership is actually, sorry, my screen's glitching. It's actually career advancement and holding on to, they'd be given opportunity to hold on to the satisfaction to be had in facilitating student success. So I suggest, so this is where I am at the minute anyway, I suggest we must nurture self-awareness. So program leaders might find the strength in their intrinsic motivation to lean into the demanding role. And I think this is where artistry is really useful and where artistry can be developed. And I wonder if it's in this sense of artistry that we can help program leaders find a really positive professional identity in education-focused academic practice, in being a program leader. So to conclude, I'd suggest that the role of the program leader necessarily draws on the program leader's personal and professional strengths and motivations. And given its rich complexity, it's an exercise of a subtle and situated academic artistry, an artistry that is inherently nuanced and authentic and sometimes intangible.
Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, thank you very much. Very interesting. Sorry, I was just sort of frantically writing down notes because this is something that is sort of very interesting for something that I'm doing at the moment, supporting program leads with a colleague at Southampton. So I was kind of frantically writing down notes. From the chat, somebody commented that navigating value conflict is so important for the program role. And again, you've mentioned sort of various dimensions and various elements and identities to the role of the program lead. So I wonder if you could sort of tell us a little bit more about what you think about this conflict of values that come into play when you become a program lead, or when somebody, not necessarily you.
Yeah, I think that's an issue that I've come across quite often working with program leads, and which is why I think this sense of artistry is really important, and authenticity is really important. Program leads can often feel quite compromised, that they have a real dedication to their students, their community, and their discipline, but they're working in a very fixed and they can feel that they're working in a very fixed and constrained institutional structure. So the work that we've done at Hull and work that we're starting on just at Brookes actually is in really building kind of academic agency in program leaders, so we can help those program leaders in becoming more empowered and enabled, and give them opportunity to become involved in shaping those structures so that conflict, we use their expertise to create an institution that better serves their students, their discipline, and their program. And it is in enabling them to start making those, reshaping those institutions, that we can see that the conflict will become less, so they become active agents in creating the institution that they have to inhabit. So those conflicts should be less apparent, I would hope.
Yes, and again, I want to sort of perhaps explore again that notion of conflict, because I think it's something that creates a bit of frustration in sort of for program leads in many institutions, and I think it's all about, again, being empowered or feeling empowered, and the constraints within which sort of some program leads have to work. And again, you mentioned sort of being self-aware, and that kind of linking up with the notion of artistry. I wonder again if you wanted to explore a little bit more how you support program leads to become more self-aware of their role.
Yeah, the process of reflection is really important, an opportunity to commune with colleagues in similar roles. So I think one of the really important pieces of work that we did at Hull, and we've just started the same thing again at Brookes, was create a community of practice for program leaders. So we established a network for program leads, and the network we would put we would offer opportunity for program leaders to speak with decision makers, be introduced, and we'd map into that, keeping them up to date with new initiatives across the institution, speaking with decision makers and academic development. And tapped into that would be time for discussion and reflection, because that it is through that discussion with peers that program leaders felt a sense of, firstly, that it broke down that sense of isolation and struggle, that they're not the only person that feels really conflicted, that is balancing multiple agendas, multiple conflicting priorities. but also where they can discuss the role and find a sense of purpose and a sense of empowerment. One of the pieces of work that I'd like to develop at Brookes is actually having a more structured approach to applying for senior fellowship and senior fellowship for program leads, so they can engage in that active reflective process.
Two more questions, I think. One from the chat. Do we need to support program leaders in being as well as doing program leadership?
Yes, that's just it, Helen. Or was it Petya? That's just it. Because and this is why your work really helped me move my thinking on about program leaders. So I read started reading your book, and I suddenly was like struck with horror that a lot of the work that I'd been doing with program leaders was actually about helping them do stuff rather than be program leaders. Even though I've done work on building identity, and I've done really effective work actually in raising the esteem of education focused success for program leaders, it's like the penny dropped when I read your work, and the artistry really fits that. Because when I've gone back to the data for the research we conducted at Hull, it is in what the program leaders do. It's in how they bring their knowledge of their systems, their devotion to the program, and their own kind of what's the word that was used, the kind of improvising, kind of being a little bit canny, working through the systems. It's in that doing that the program leaders feel a sense of satisfaction and pride. And it's in that sense of satisfaction and pride that authentic identity lies, and esteem lies. And so I'm really grateful for your work for helping me kind of get there, you know. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, well, it answers it for me, maybe not for Helen, but I think there's a lot in what you said that is very useful, I think, in kind of conceptualizing the role of the program lead. And Helen sends a smile, as you can see. Following on from what you said, Jenny, one last question. I think we've got 1 minute to go. I like the notion of being responsible to the community that you mentioned at the very beginning. And I wonder if you could expand on that kind of sense of being responsible, so being in a position where you have to be responsible for a community, for the program lead.
Well, in the research that we conducted, the program leads that we spoke to had a really strong sense of commitment to their program team. Even though they didn't have line management responsibility, they felt a really strong sense that they were definitely the leaders, and in that leadership they were protectors. And so they would be very much invested in ensuring everyone involved in that program, the students, the professional service staff, administrative staff, the teachers, the colleagues in the library and support services, they were very much invested in ensuring all of those involved had a sense of pride in the program, and they felt connected to the program. And this was something to do with the sense of pride that individual program leaders had in being a leader in a program in philosophy or whatever their discipline was. And they saw that as being a creative endeavor, that it was, and it had the same esteem for them and the same meaning for them as you know, a string of referable research outputs. And this, if you bear in mind that this research was conducted in a research intensive institution, I think that was really important. In fact, one program leader, it was lovely, just a lovely phrase that I remember always. He said when he became a program leader and they put on their email signature that they were the program leader in their discipline, he felt a real sense of pride, and he said, you know, I stood a bit taller. They felt like they'd really achieved something in their professional journey, which is just, that's how it should be. It should be as esteemed as a any other academic endeavour